Alright, hello. Today we're taking a look at a really cool piece of equipment, a Marconi Instruments Radio Communication Test Set 2955. This is an older piece of gear, and the copyright date on the help page has it at 1987, but it's still a very relevant tool, depending on what sort of radios you want to test anyway. This particular unit spans, I believe, 500 gigahertz up to 1 gigahertz, so it's got pretty good coverage. And it's a very useful tool for testing and categorizing transmitters and receivers. Right, so it essentially it can act as a receiver, and it can show you what sort of distortion or other issues that your transmitter might have, and then likewise it can it itself can act as a transmitter and output a signal for you to receive, and then you can take the signal from your receiver and pass it back into the audio frequency input, and it will automatically measure things like distortion and signal to noise and synad, that sort of thing. I haven't had a lot of time with this yet, and I don't have the manual yet, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But so far, I've been having a lot of fun just poking around with it. It's a very cool piece of equipment. This has an additional deck attached to the bottom of it, this Cellular Radio Test System 2957. As you can imagine, this is for working with very old cellular systems, from the late 80s and early 90s. Thankfully, it can be just left off entirely. You don't have to run it. I don't know anything about it yet, but it's there. What I'm going to do now is just go over sort of a brief overview of what this thing does and how it works. I'm going to be testing with just about Baofeng, the classic UV5R here. As you can see, we have an antenna. It's kind of hard to see, but I can spin it over. We just have a about foot-long whip attached to one of these connectors here. So this has two input-output for RF. Both are 50 ohm. There's a BNC that's rated for half a watt input. I believe this is higher sensitivity. And then it has a type N connector, to which I have a BNC adapter. This particular unit is marked 20 watts input. However, the B revision of this instrument, I believe, went up to either 60 or 75 watts, and the input attenuator is the same, so it's very likely that this could take higher power, but this is not really intended to be used to measure transmitter power output. There are better tools for that, especially if you want to measure beyond 20 watts, but it is something that it can do. It can measure it. So in its current mode, I have it running in what's called receiver test mode, and what this does is it broadcasts a signal that your receiver then can pick up, and you can just audibly listen to the signal and see if it sounds right, or like I said, you can pass that signal back into the AF input, and it will automatically characterize that signal. It can also work as a transmitter test, in which case it is a receiver, and you can look at the signal that's being transmitted to it. Right now, like I said, I've got it in receiver test. It's transmitting, or will be transmitting at 438.5 megahertz. The level I have turned off at negative 100 dBm. And then I can also change the modulation level. So this is the audio. This right now would be a 1 kilohertz tone. If I wanted to lower it, for example, I find 750 hertz to sound a lot better. We can lower it. But now let's go back to RF level, and get my radio up here. And I found that minus 40 dBm works pretty well. And so now we have our tone. And if I go back here and lower this further, for example, I'm lowering the wrong one. I meant to be doing frequency. So change this to 500 hertz. Now we have a 500 hertz tone, right? And in Synad, it just sends a constant tone. In signal to noise, it sends these chirps. And then you can generate, like I just said, a very wide range of frequencies. Right now it's in FM mode. I need to see, I haven't gone through the manual yet, but I need to see if I can generate AM frequencies. I haven't gotten that far in testing yet. But now, if we switch over to transmitter test mode, so I was futzing around with 7 megahertz, but if I kick it back to FM, and it has a frequency that I keyed in, but it will also automatically pick up the strongest frequency that's transmitted to it. So if I just transmit open, oh, it should automatically switch over to it. There we go. Had to switch it over to auto tune. Transmit open. There we have 438.5, right? And you can see the power output, modulation frequency, levels, that sort of thing. Now I can send a DTMF tone. Oof, that's loud, I apologize. Right, we can see that. And we can also view a scope. Right, so I can also whistle into it to get a nice sine wave. So, just a pretty cool piece of gear, very capable tool. You can do some other work as well. So for example, you can generate tones for different types of radios that use those kind of sideband tones. And it can also work, oops, get out of this. You can work in a duplex mode where it transmits and receives at the same time, which is pretty cool. I haven't fiddled around with this yet, but the idea of it is very interesting. And then, like I showed, you can do an oscilloscope view or a just this graph view. I don't think the receiver test. Okay, the receiver test does have an oscilloscope view. So if well, we should be seeing. That's probably for the input. Yeah. So anyway, very interesting piece of equipment. Once I figure out how to get it to generate an AM signal, I want to do some testing of this communication receiver as well as the Cellarcraft K1. I know the K1 works perfectly fine. So what I'm really interested in using the K1 for is to generate, and that's why I had that set to 40 meters earlier, is to generate tones on the K1 and have the Marconi pick it up. But anyway, that's it for now. Just wanted to sort of do a brief overview of some of this thing's capabilities at a very high level. Of course, this has a lot of other capabilities that I have not really dug into at all yet. I don't know what this DIN connector for accessories is. It also has some other capabilities in here, when it comes to filtering and other stuff. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I don't really fully know how it works, but that's something that I'm looking forward to playing around with. I think it's a really cool tool. So, yeah, that's that.